It's getting chopped off. There.
See my Mr. Bungle and Pearl Jam album behind me. Trying a new spot I don't usually use for meetings. Let's see how it works. All right. Is it recording? Okay, it is recording. All right, so we're being recorded. Welcome to the 2026 ATM walkthrough. I'm Tom Morale, your moderator. With me, I have Jeremy Stoll, the town administrator. I also have Carl Hommel, who wears a few different hats in town. Concom, as well as the vice chair of the General Bylaw Review Committee, as well as Finance Committee. We have Jason Cooter, who's the chair of our select board. Thank you for coming. So the way this kind of works is we kind of go through the warrant back to front. And the purpose is not to litigate or advocate for anything one way or another, but just to kind of explain the mechanics of what's going on. Why do certain things need 2/3 votes? What the heck is stabilization? That sort of thing. Kind of a primer to how town meeting works. It is going to work. So that's the goal of when we do these things. Again, the town meeting's next Tuesday. I know we've had quite a few public meetings on a couple different subjects on this, so we're going to really stay away from talking about the budget as well as the citizens petition, because there's been so much public input and so many meetings on that. We want to focus on the ones that haven't really gotten as much airtime. So I don't know if Jeremy wanted to start talking about
certainly
Article 2.
Yeah, so let me pull everything up here. All right. Can you see my PDF, my warrant report?
Yes, we can.
Great. So this is something I implemented a few town meetings ago, and this is going through each individual article and discussing its implications for town meeting. Kind of just conduct a town meeting. Folks have to only registered voters. We use electronic voting. You need to make your motions and amendments in writing, and address everything through the town moderator. And please, please, please return your clickers at the end of the meeting. Motion one's a bit belt and suspenders for us. It says you need to identify a funding source for anything that you're doing. So this is something we've had on the town meeting agenda and will continue to, but any motion needs to identify a funding source. So number 2, bills of a prior year. It is a matter of course that vendors don't get us stuff. We miss some stuff. It's generally innocuous as it is right here. So we've got a handful of things, totaling less than $3,000. So we're not seeking an additional appropriation. We'll use our current year resources to fund this. And because it is bills of a prior year at an annual town meeting, it requires a 4/5 majority to pass. Elected official salaries. So I plan to put this on consent agenda. This is stipends for 1, 2, 3, 4 different boards, 2 different individuals, and then a salary for an individual. And this is our implementation of our classification and compensation study for said individual, the town clerk. Simple majority. Article 4 is the general fund budget. We're not going to get too much into tonight, but there's 3 pieces to this. The base motion for the municipal budget, an additional appropriation from stabilization, which requires a 2/3 vote, and then an additional appropriation that is contingent upon an override vote. So I urge folks to watch recent finance committee and select board meetings on the topic, specifically last Wednesday's information session from the select board. And then I linked here the MGL that governs the process. So MURSD, the regional school district, has a number of resources available on their budget website. So I encourage folks to navigate towards that. 5 and 6 are pretty straightforward. 5 is accepting Chapter 90 money. Yeah, Tom?
Can I just interject for a second? Several of these you see say article to be included on the consent agenda. Can we just explain what the consent agenda is really quick?
Yeah, good point. So things that are routine and seemingly uncontroversial, we put on a consent agenda, and then we read them out and we put them up on the board and we say, here's everything we're going to put together, essentially a super article of sorts. And we put everything together on the consent agenda and say, if anyone wants to pull anything out, speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, we're going to vote on these all at once without further discussion. So things like accept and expend Chapter 90, this is money from the state that we get, and it's formulaic, and we have no power over changing what that number is. And this is just allowing the town to engage contracts relative to this state funding. So there's not really a lot of deliberative or policy-making decisions here. So we say, let's put it on the consent agenda so we can move on and deliberate and not be here till midnight with all the other articles.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. So that's what Chapter 90 is, state funding for road repair. So we say, thank you very much for the money, and we move on. Accepting easements. This was a recommendation from town council at special town meeting in 2024. It needs to be reauthorized each fiscal year. We haven't actually exercised this power, but if the select board has the ability to enter into non-monetary easements without coming to town meeting, it's just a thing that expedites the grinding gears of government a little bit quicker.
Is this something we could grant to the select board with the town bylaw?
As town council explained it to me, it needs yearly authorization from town meeting. I don't know if that was because we don't have a bylaw or if that's just how it works, but that's a good question for the general bylaw review committee to explore.
Well, it would require Tom Baroli, the chair of the committee, to reach out to town council.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is something that needs to be accepted every year. But we could look into it.
But anyway, because it's so ministerial in nature, we put it on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Snow and ice removal deficit. So to remind folks, the town budget's $194,000 per year for snow and ice removal. And it is the only part of our budget which Mass General Law allows us to deficit spend. And then we either need to figure it out at the end of the year with some transfers or other funds, or if the deficit's so bad, we can raise it on next year's levy. Or if it's so bad, we can apply to the Department of Revenue and raise it on multiple years levy. Winter 2025-2026 was pretty brutal, but we've got enough available free cash where we can fund that deficit. So we spent our $194,000 plus an additional $228,949.96. And more than half of that was driven by salt purchases. There was a lot of salting events. So we've got over $900,000 in available free cash. And I'll present about that before the meeting starts. So we're still rolling over a balance of greater than $700,000 in free cash into fiscal 2027. And I was comfortable using free cash for this sort of thing because it was, at least in recent memory, an extraordinary winter.
Yeah.
You have a typo in the commentary. The fourth to the last word has the rolls as a homonym.
Yep, thank you. And that will be, I have some updates for tomorrow. I appreciate that. I have some updates tomorrow on the Board of Assessors, so I will fix that. Thanks, Carl. So these are the updates from tomorrow. So the Assessor Cyclical Inspection Program, Update Valuation Program that was discussed at Finance Committee, and I'm waiting for, I just got it this evening after I left, but I'm waiting for the to include the descriptions from the assessors about those programs. But those are yearly on the levy and will be included in the consent agenda as they are known quantities to town meeting.
Sherry sent me an update for my Monday FinCom meeting minutes. Is that what you're going to be including? Or is she going to up?
I
Go
sent
ahead.
Sherry, who's our principal assessor, I sent Sherry these 3 articles, 8, 9, and 10, and said, I need your commentary for this. And she sent me something specific for that. So I imagine it's very, very similar.
Okay.
But yes, it'll be included.
If you can pass that on to me so I can compare it with what's in my minutes and make sure that they're the same.
Certainly. Article 10 is from the Board of Assessors. This has not been discussed at a select Board of FinCom meeting before. So the senior means tested exemption is good for 3 years. So town meeting needs to renew it again. So essentially, seniors who have income levels, lower income seniors who qualify for what's called circuit breaker, which is another state program, qualify for an exemption that's set by select board. So this is town meeting renewing the ability of select board to grant that exemption. It's been a very popular program. Select board has been very supportive of it, and the Board of Assessors wish to continue the program.
So to be clear, this isn't actually setting the exemption.
Correct. This is
This is-
allowing the select board to set the exemption.
Got it.
And to be clear to folks, when low-income seniors are granted an exemption, it does not change the amount of money raised by the town. It shifts the burden of raising that money to everyone else in town. So the town raises the same amount of money, but low-income seniors are responsible for a smaller proportion of that than they otherwise would have been. 2 straight financial articles, water budget and solid waste budget. Those are both enterprise funds funded totally by the fee payers. There's no taxpayer money in there. All fee payers are taxpayers, but not all taxpayers are fee payers. And those have been very non-controversial in the past. Revolving fund expenditure limits, and that's why they are, sorry, I missed that part. That's why both of those things, both enterprise budgets are included in the consent agenda, and then the revolving fund, which is similar to an enterprise fund, is also included in the consent agenda. So town meeting gets to set the expenditure limit for Chapter 44, Section 53E.5 revolving funds. And the only change from this year to last is the Parks revolving fund, which took on a few more lifeguard salaries. So we changed it from a $250,000 cap to a $270,000 cap for the request. Everything else is the same. There are 2 items here on Providence Street Culvert. One to use capital project stabilization fund accounts, and one to get a debt authorization for anything not covered by current funds and grants. And again, we've had extensive conversation at Finance Committee specifically about this. But it's looking for current funds and looking for a debt authorization for the total project amount. The final borrowing, whatever that is, we'll come back and we'll rescind any difference between the authorization and the borrowing. And to be clear, this is not a debt exclusion. So this is not requesting to raise anyone's taxes relative to do this. This is envisioned to either not be borrowed or to be borrowed with inside the Proposition 2.5 levy.
Article 14 says stabilization fund. Does that require a supermajority?
2/3 vote for a stabilization fund. Yep.
Is that something to put in your commentary here?
I have it in my motion document. I've been waiting I just sent it yesterday, but for town council to get back to me with the quantum of votes requirement. So I wanted to get this information out and didn't want to wait on that sort of level of detail. But yes, stabilization fund, an appropriation from stabilization will require 2/3 vote. This is the citizens petition, which will either be postponed, tabled indefinitely, or ruled out of order per town council. It attempts to usurp select board's authority on traffic regulation, and it's not within the purview of something town meeting can do. So we will pass that over and not debate that at all. There are a number of Community Preservation Act articles that I'm going to go through here. I don't see the Community Preservation Committee chair on, but I'll do my best. So Article 17, this is we're required by the state to set aside 10% each of these buckets. So we set aside a bigger percent in the budgeted reserve. So we provide flexibility on how to spend CPA. So Community Preservation Act funds are a tax levied on taxpayers. And then because we're at the top tier of it, we get matching funds for the state. So there's a multiplier from the state level that gives us access to additional funds to do things within the purview of the Community Preservation Act. I see a couple folks waiting to talk. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm just wondering. So I see the support for MURSD debt. I'm wondering which purpose of CPA that's under. Like I know it's supposed to be affordable housing, historic preservation, and open space preservation.
Yeah, so it's on the recreation, open space preservation.
Gotcha.
So it is available for, let's see, there are portions of the athletic field depth harmonization which are eligible for CPA funding. Notably, the turf field portion is not. So various parts of the fields project that aren't the actual turf field are available for CPA support. So $100,000 was transferred last year. This is another $100,000. So this is $88,000 of debt service this year that will be covered by this fund. And CPA is committed to $100,000 a year for the life of the debt, which will be 20 to 30 years.
And Mazar sent an email about 4 p.m. today asking to have Article 17 have specific numbers, so you can check your email and see that.
Thank you. Yeah, and there were a few changes to specific numbers in here too that after I posted it, I got that email. So I'll make those revisions tomorrow. Just because we're talking about, I'm going to skip 19 and go to 20, CPA support for police station debt. So this is something we've had for the last couple of years, and the same idea as the field debt. It is the historic preservation portion of the police station project.
That's the facade, right? Yeah.
Yep. And then Article 19, CPA Affordable Housing Coordinator. Previously, this was a stipended position outside of a full-time employee, and in both fiscal 26 and 27, CPC voted to use CPA funds to fund $15,000 worth of the town planner's salary for their work on affordable housing. So the general fund budget reflects that. And so absent this, we would need to find $15,000 within the general fund budget to maintain the town planner's position. These are both considered on the consent agenda. CPA funds transferred for Oak and Wall Farm Preserve. So when the town purchased the Denton property conservation restriction, it was less than anticipated, and the town benefited from that. The grant funds were not reduced. So we are using those funds to be a steward of the Oak and Wall Farm Preserve. So these are not new funds. These were previously appropriated for a similar purpose, and we're moving them to be able to go from purchase to stewardship. Similarly, no new funds. Article 22, the paddock property purchase at the end of fiscal 23. This is to create a new account for 7375 Providence Street house maintenance. So there are a few issues at the house that need to be taken care of before the town can turn and sell it for an affordable housing plot and property. So this takes previously appropriated money and transfers it from where it was in surplus to where it could be put to good use. Article 23, again, same vein about where this was previously appropriated money. So this was $500,000 that was appropriated for affordable housing at 52 Providence Street. That has proved unviable. We have not received any successful proposals. So that transfers this to 75 Providence Street, looking to subsidize affordable housing in the 2 to 5 units range, capped at a $500,000 incentive
This
or
is
substitute.
also something in Ann Mazar's email. The amount that will be now $100,000 instead of $500,000. I sent mail off to the chair of the FinCom to see if the FinCom at our meeting 45 minutes before town meeting will reconsider this article. If he does so, then you would change your FinCom recommendation from not favorable to pending. So that
Yep. Great point. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to update this document for something, but the FinCom recommendation.
We asked the FinCom before each article,
right, but I'm
what
saying
their recommendation is.
Whether this your PDF gets updated or not, depending on when Mike Krager responds to my email asking about that.
Right. If FinCom is open to saying we will reconsider this, then yes, I would change that to pending, certainly.
Right.
Yep.
And you should find that out in the next. It was whenever Mike Krager looks at his town email.
It's pretty good. These next couple of CPA articles, FinCom did not express an opinion on, waiting for additional information from CPC. So Article 24, Sunrise Apartments, the 30 units of elderly and disabled housing run by the Mendon Housing Authority, has a water tank system that has failed with a approximately $183,000 repair bill. And they only have $130,000 available in their capital fund to remedy this. So CPC decided that this was not a maintenance issue. This was the ability to but for this funding, we would lose affordable housing units in town. So CPC committed $60,000 to this. Finance Committee recommendation is pending further explanation from CPC. Historic sign restoration. So this is approximately $10,000 for historic signs at Founders Park and a road sign from the 1930s. Historic restoration and preservation is an expensive endeavor, and this is squarely within the realm of what CPA funds can be used for. Similarly, with the historic weights and measures, so I shared a picture earlier with Select Board about this item. So we're looking to move this. It's a big cabinet with the weights and measures, the scale and measures and associated equipment from where it is at the Historic Society to Town Hall, likely on the stage behind where the public meetings are upstairs. So we'll clean up that area and kind of turn it into a mini display area for all these sorts of things. So $10,000 is the upper bound on this. That's not to say this will necessarily cost $600 or necessarily cost $100,000. And then, like all these other things, if they're not fully expended, these funds will be closed out back to their original appropriation source. Article 27, again, historic preservation, allocation of CPA funds. So the Mendon Historical Society has a number of documents from the 18th and 19th century that need professional preservation to maintain their integrity. So these are CPA funds to support that mission of historic preservation from the Mendon Historical Society. And that's not true. I don't know why it says not favorable. The Select Board is, so I will correct that and that must be a carryover from the 2025 version of this that I worked from.
Yeah, we're definitely in favor of that one.
Yeah, sorry about that, Select Board.
That's all right.
That will be corrected.
Does that include our
That's why
copy
we
of
do
the
the walkthrough.
declaration?
That is housed by the Mendon Town Clerk, I believe, and not the Mendon Historical Society. So I believe that's already been preserved in the same manner that we're talking about now. So the Article 28, 5-year land use plan. So this is required by Mendon's bylaws to have town meeting approve this each year. So I detailed here the 5 goals of the plan: improve access to open spaces and recreational resources, expand the amount of and improve the condition of passive and active recreation, protect natural resources, including forests, farmlands, water resources, and wildlife, promote and preserve Mendon's sense of community, help guide businesses and residential development to shape Mendon's growth, avoiding haphazard development. Haphazard development is not a goal, and again, that will be corrected on a formatting well. You can tell I got this done at about 4 o'clock today and wanted to make sure it was done for this meeting. So I will correct both of those things in Article 27 and 28 first thing tomorrow morning. Article 29, I'm not entirely sure this needs town meeting approval, but it got town meeting approval to start. So Land Use Committee brought it back here. There was money from the Mendon Land Bank account, which is no longer actively receiving funds, but has a fund balance to do a boundary plan. They're no longer in need of doing that plan. So this is closing that account back out to its initial funding source.
And this is not something that the FinCom recommends, even though they've got a dollar sign in the motion?
The bylaw says the expenditure of funds, and this
Okay.
is closing an account and not the opposite of expending funds.
Okay.
So I did not bring it to FinCom, no.
So,
Um,
but but they're moving funds though.
they're closing a fund back to its original funding source. So it's not an expenditure of funds. It's actually rescinding an appropriation.
It's not considered a transfer.
No, because it's going back to it's closing a fund and rescinding the appropriation. So it's not transferring it from one expenditure fund to another expenditure fund. It's going back to its original funding source. So it would be like whenever we close a town meeting article fund and no longer going to do those appropriations. So then if we wanted to reappropriate those funds and re-expend those funds, then Finance Committee would have a opine their opinion on it.
I think that's worth you giving a 2-minute explanation at the FinCom meeting next Tuesday,
No problem.
just to make clear.
Electronic bylaw program. So this is to something FinCom has recommended as a $17,500 expenditure from free cash. Takes our bylaws from a manually updated Word document and puts them into a professionally managed program. I've linked Upton here. So Upton has the same vendor that we're proposing to use. It really professionalizes the look and the integrity of bylaws, given versioning history and whatnot. And I think it's a great step forward for the town. Article 31, conservation agent salary support. So this is for fiscal 26. That's not a typo, not 27. This is fiscal 26. So in fiscal 25, this account, this wetlands protections account, supported $15,000 worth of the conservation agent salary as we brought the position to a 40-hour-a-week position. Fiscal 26, we ramped that down to $4,088 as part of a formulaic approach. Conservation Commission and Select Board endorse this approach as part of the fiscal 26 budget process, but it requires an actual appropriation from the account to be able to do that. So that's what this looks to do, to take the final step in this, already pre-approved by constituent parties approach to funding the position. So really, this will bolster free cash by $4,088 at the end of fiscal 26. And we have 3 bylaw changes here. The most substantive one is the creation of a new town administrator bylaw. So this was part of the fiscal 2026 and fiscal 2022 period, fiscal 202 period. So another amendment for me, but it was part of the select board goals for fiscal 2026. And modeled after the Upton 2008 Town Manager Special Act. And by modeled, I mean we literally copied and pasted it and then went through and made the changes we wanted to make. So it is hyper similar to what Upton's form of government looks like. It has kind of four major points that codifies roles of the town administrator. Sign payroll and expense warrants. So this is something that right now I review and then bring to the select board chair to sign. They're detailed and kind of in the weeds, and not something the select board can spend a lot of time diving into. So I do ahead of time. So I already do the analytical piece. So it's just codifying the ministerial piece of it. Appoint and remove non-department head positions. So the bylaw states all the department heads that the select board gets to appoint, and then everybody else I do. So that means we don't need to wait 2 weeks to appoint an administrative assistant or a heavy equipment operator, and they can get started right away. After discussion with the select board, the select board kept the appointing and removal authority for full-time police officers and firefighters. So even though those are rank and file positions, that appointing authority remains with the select board. Town administrator can sign contracts up to $50,000. It's actually pegged on a MGL, which requires sealed bids above that $50,000 range. So if that MGL changed, we would be able to that dollar value would up. But right now it's $50,000 as pegged to MGL. And then it explicitly says that the town administrator is responsible for creating and presenting an annual balanced budget, which is something I've done the last 2 years anyway. But absent a bylaw, policy, or vote that says that I do that, it would otherwise fall to the finance committee. So this says that the town administrator is responsible for doing so. It also sets up a process for the select board to appoint and remove someone from the town administrator role, among some other small changes about town operations. A lot of this is just to make town day-to-day government operations a little bit more efficient, because as it stands, the town administrator can only do the very, very specific things the select board allows it to do, which is not super ideal for running a $26 million operation. So not only does it improve the day-to-day, it also improves the future prospects for the town in professionalizing town operations and codifying this role in terms of setting its responsibilities, but also limits on its responsibilities. It will provide an improved recruitment process in the future where folks will know that the town is serious about governance, and I think it will improve the candidate pool for future town administrators in the many years in the future.
Before you go on to that, I have a question for both you and Jason. The GBRC also approved this. Since you're the actual town administrator, it might be looked at as self-serving if you do the discussion and read the paragraph that you just did. So if you think it advisable, I can volunteer to stand up and do and read that from the microphone instead of you having to do it.
I appreciate that. I talk a lot at town meeting the way it is. Yeah, if you're volunteering to go through and talk about that stuff, I think that's a good idea. Chair,
I basically read what you just said.
I think that's advisable.
Yeah, I think it's a fine idea.
Yeah, it is often difficult to say this office rather than me when I'm talking about it. So I get that.
Yes, and when I was working with you on various drafts, I was very careful to say that no, we want to make sure that this bylaw is not specifically written for what Jeremy wants. It's what we want to have in the town having in that role.
Certainly, and I'm very fond of saying I know it's not a budget, but I say we budget to the position, not the person, and I want to make sure that this reflects that as well. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Land use committee. This is an existing bylaw with some changes. A lot of changes around clarity on how land is purchased and how the land use committee doesn't actually get to purchase land, but needs select board and then town meeting approval. And then also incorporates specific references to some plans that need to be considered as the land use committee does their work. And then deletes passages relative to the land bank, which is no longer active, which I referenced earlier. And then the last article, the Council on Aging bylaw change makes one adjective change early in the bylaw, but then the substantive change is about the election of officers, chair, vice chair, co-chair, secretary, treasurer, whatnot. The bylaw was previously silent on such change. So ultimately, a minor change in terms of their operations, just kind of codifying what they already currently do.
Is the sponsor the GBRC or the select board?
So I put the GBRC in that this was actually one of my suggestions to the GBRC, and it didn't quite go as far as I wanted it to. But that's okay. It still is important changes. But this was not something that was driven from the select board. This was kind of through conversations with the GBRC. So that's why I put it on here as a sponsor.
Yeah, as part of our rolling review.
Yeah, I also these are the recommendations of the Council on Aging themselves.
So are they the sponsor? And I'm looking to say, who's going to be standing up at the microphone to speak to this? Is it me or someone from the COA who just happens to be on it?
I had thought this was coming from the COA myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, either way, one of those.
I listed it on the warrant as the GBRC. I think it would be prudent to request an opinion from COA while,
Well, we have a member who's both on the COA board and the GBRC, so she's a natural person to do it.
There you go. That's the end of the warrant. Those couple of changes that we noted that I need to change kind of typo wise, but then this actual document, I've got a snapshot on the budget, which shows revenues and expenditures, the roll up on each individual department and their base budget. What you see here is motions B and motion C for Article 4. So this shows the base budget and then the appropriation for stabilization and the appropriation contingent upon the Proposition 2.5 override to get you to a total budget of $27.7 million. And then also within this packet, I've got the water budget and the solid waste and recycling budget from the enterprise funds. So you can find these if you navigate to mendonma.gov, go to departments and click on town meeting, and then go to supporting documents. You can find them. I've also shared it on our social media. So it's mendonma.com/town-meeting-docs. And you can find it all there. And I'll share it a few more times with both town listservs and on social media before the meeting. And then once you get to the meeting, there'll be some flyers up with the URL and QR codes to be able to navigate to find these supporting documents.
When this video gets posted to YouTube, that's something else you can put on Facebook and on the town website.
Yeah, certainly. Any other clarifying questions on any of the mechanics of the articles?
I think that you explained everything, Jeremy. Thank you. I mean, yeah, I think that's pretty exhaustive. So I think that just about covers the warrant and everything we wanted to cover tonight.
All right, great. And so at the start of town meeting, Mr. Moderator, I'll present kind of a state of the town, and then the schools were looking to do a brief introduction on their budget as well.
So I was thinking that could be part of the discussion of the budget.
Okay, so you want the schools to go during Article 4?
Correct.
Okay, that works. That makes sense.
Yeah, just because, like, I mean, it is part of discussion of that subject anyway. So.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thank you.
This is going to be posted to the town website, so people can review ahead of town meeting. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.